Hello, I'm Anna, and I'm going to be talking about the amygdala for the next 4-ish minutes. The amygdala, a part of the limbic system located in the temporal lobe, is composed of two almond-shaped parts, which is where it got its name. The amygdala is involved in memory, decision-making, and, most recognizably, emotions such as fear and aggression. It's actually involved in all emotions, but fear has been the most studied function of the amygdala, so that's what most people know it for. The amygdala helps to consolidate and store memories that are linked with strong emotions, particularly negative ones, and it's also the major part of the brain associated with fear conditioning, a process that helps us learn what to fear by associating neutral stimuli with unconditioned stimuli. I chose the amygdala for this project because it's known for regulating fear. Many studies have found a link between abnormal activity in the amygdala and anxiety disorders, so as someone with an anxiety disorder, I'm interested in how and why this is. The amygdala is composed of several different clusters of nuclei. They can be kind of hard to keep track of, but essentially there are two regions. The first is the corticomedial region, comprised of the cortical, medial, and central nuclei, and the second is the basolateral region, comprised of the lateral, basal, and accessory basal nuclei. There are yet other terms like basomedial and basolateral complex that refer to different groupings of the nuclei, which can be kind of confusing. But each nucleus of the amygdala has connections to different parts of the brain, such as the olfactory system, the hippocampus, and the ventral striatum. The lateral nucleus is the part that receives sensory information from areas like the thalamus and the cortex. The central and medial nuclei are the parts that send that information out to other areas, such as the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus triggers the release of cortisol, the stress hormone, from the adrenal gland, and it also triggers the autonomic nervous system, which can result in the physiological symptoms of fear, such as sweating, shaking, and increased heart rate. I read a few studies, on the role of the amygdala in anxiety disorders for this project. The first article I read was a meta-analysis of research on the role of the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex in anxiety disorders. Studies have shown that the major parts of the prefrontal cortex activated in subjects experiencing phobic fear are the right inferior PFC and the medial orbital PFC. Anxiety is also associated with the right side of various sectors of the PFC. Research on the amygdala, particularly on rodents, has proved its role in conditioned fear, but there's still controversy about whether learned information is actually stored in the amygdala and if there's a difference in function between the left and right amygdalae. There's a lot that we're unsure of when it comes to the amygdala, but studies seem to show that the right amygdala may be more active in unconscious fear, while the left is more active in conscious fear. One of the most compelling and most well-known studies described in the article was on rats with lesions on the medial prefrontal cortex, who showed significantly slower extinction of negative learned responses than the control group. The research indicated there's an inhibitory pathway between the medial PFC and the amygdala, which, when damaged, leaves the amygdala unchecked. So while this first article was an analysis on decades of research, the second article I looked at was more current. It acknowledged the significant studies mentioned in the previous article and the connections between the PFC and the amygdala, fear conditioning and extinction, and the roles of facial expressions in triggering the amygdala, which was also covered by the first article. It then went on to discuss how those with social anxiety disorders exhibit more extreme reactions to negative facial expressions and emotionally negative scenes. The socially anxious subjects showed hypoactivity in the PFC when viewing these images, leaving the amygdala unbalanced. Subjects with PTSD were also found to have less inhibition of the amygdala, and they were also showed slower extinction of negative responses, like the rats in the previous study. These results mimic those found in the previous article. The last article I read about was about the amygdala-hippocampal connectivity. So studies have shown high amygdala and hippocampal activity during emotional memory retrieval. The goals of this article were to explore the interactions between emotion and memory and determine whether the retrieval of emotions dependent on emotion or task relevancy. An experiment was conducted in which participants had to complete memory tasks and then relate them to relevant emotional or neutral contexts. The results of the study showed an increase in connection between the amygdala and the hippocampus when subjects process negative contexts. This suggests that the amygdala plays a prime role in responding to recalled emotional memories in the hippocampus. So as you can see, the amygdala is a vital structure in emotions and memory, and it's a significant factor in anxiety disorders, which is why it's my favorite part of the brain. More research is definitely needed, however, in order to fully understand the different connections and functions of the amygdala. I hope this video was enjoyable and educational, and here are the sources that I used for the project.